Dzogchen Today podcast. Welcome to Dzogchen Today's podcast. This series of Dzogchen in everyday life is designed for us to get more familiar with the Dzogchen view and what it can bring in our daily life through personal sharings and short practices.
Hi everybody, welcome in this podcast Dzogchen in Everyday Life. And in this new 3-part series, we will focus on a theme that is increasingly present in contemporary society. It is the feeling of loneliness. And this is a word that can be frightening and sometimes disturbing because it touches something deep within us. But loneliness is not always the same experience. When it's chosen, it can be a space for introspection, clarity, and also joy. But when it's imposed on us, it's a completely different story. It can become heavy, oppressive, and we can feel abandoned, empty, cut off from others. And these feelings have a real impact on our mental and physical health. So, over the course of these 3 episodes, we will take the time to explore the many faces of loneliness through the prism of Dzogchen to better understand its inner workings. And in this first episode, we will devote it to the suffering of solitude, the kind we undergo. And to talk about it, I'm very delighted to welcome Mila Khyentse Rinpoche.
Hello, how are you?
Welcome. And Arnaud Buisson. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome. We are very happy to have you here both.
Oh, we are really delighted to be here.
That's perfect. So, Mila Khyentse Rinpoche, you are a trained scholar, consultant and teacher of Dzogchen. You have been traditionally trained in the Himalayas and in Europe, and you are a lineage holder.
Yes.
And Arnaud Buisson, you are a psychiatrist at the hospital, and you lead some program based on mindfulness and also compassion, meditation on compassion.
Yes.
And you have been studying and practicing Dzogchen and Buddhist teaching for over 10 years. So let's jump into the topic with you, Arnaud Buisson, as a psychiatrist. Could you describe what loneliness is, its context, and its impact on our health?
Yes. To begin with, it's important to differentiate between solitude, that's the fact of physically alone, and the feeling of loneliness, which is a feeling, so by definition, an inner experience. The feeling of loneliness is a universal human experience, yet it is deeply personal and subjective. It appears that, although it can be reactivated by certain situations, the feeling of loneliness is not always linked to the objective characteristics of the experience itself. For example, who among us has never felt lonely in the middle of a crowd, at a family dinner, or even behind our screens on social media? The feeling of loneliness is often experienced as a sense of emptiness, isolation, or lack of meaningful connection with others. And it can be more or less recurrent and intense. It doesn't depend on the quantity of relationships we have, but rather on the quality of our connection.
So you were saying that we can have a lot of interaction, many friends, and still feel lonely because the quality of the interaction or the link is not sufficient.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And on a personal level, in this state of loneliness, our entire body-mind system is affected. The scientific literature finds a number of physical complications, such as a weakening of the immune system, an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes. But there is also psychological complications, including depression, anxiety, suicidal behavior, sleep disorders, cognitive decline, lower self-esteem, and even an increased risk of a psychotic episode. The feeling of loneliness, therefore, has a direct psychophysiological impact, but also indirect repercussions related to our automatic responses to this feeling. Because one essential thing to say is that the way we experience our environment is very much linked to the way we refer to ourselves. And so, carried away by this feeling of loneliness, we find ourselves thrown into the world of attachment, the quest for completeness, and thus we run the risk of establishing imbalanced relationships with what surrounds us. In reaction to this suffering, we seek to avoid contact with our feelings in a variety of ways. For some people, it seems easier to try to fill this void with drugs, food, emotional relationships, thrill, or with a hectic and a busy life.
Even spiritual practice.
Even spiritual practice, yes, of course. And when this feeling appears and reactivates, we set in motion a whole process to avoid it. This is how we build our defense systems. And we end up feeding the problem by giving it energy through our beliefs and behaviors. But we can discover that every time there is an unpleasant feeling, it's always linked to a personal vulnerability. It's our own mind that creates suffering, so we can take responsibility for it. And so in this topic, I'd like to share a concrete example with you. At the hospital where I work, we support certain patients with a meditation program based on compassion. And through certain practices, we learn to recognize our suffering and to respond to it with kindness, patience, and understanding. We practice attentive presence and heart-openness, which allows us to rediscover within ourselves a resourceful sense of completeness, peace, calm, inner warmth, and trust. It's always amazing to see the effect of these practices on the group and on the responses that each person can bring to different issues. Because there is no external difference for us between the beginning and the end of the session. We are not more surrounded by family or friends, nor have we engaged in personal, intimate, or social relationships. And yet, our state of mind is different. We feel a deeper connection with ourselves, with the rest of the group and the rest of the world. These practices really reveal something quite substantial, nourishing.
Okay, so we understand that it comes from our mind. I mean, our way to relate it to the experience, this feeling of loneliness. So maybe Mila Khyentse Rinpoche, would you explain what is the view of Dzogchen on this topic?
There is no view
on
this topic. So let me explain. This, as Arnaud said, there is first of all, a really big difference between loneliness and the feeling of loneliness, which is completely different. Loneliness is an idea, a concept, something that is more related to a general view of our functioning, and the direct experience of loneliness, and this is the feeling of loneliness. For the Dzogchen tradition, it's important to say that this is two different things. First of all, the general overview, which is completely conceptual. Then the direct experience, which is more direct. This is the way we live it. This is the way we experience it. And then there is what we can say the ground of the individual. And the ground of the individual is not what are the two other things, loneliness and feeling of loneliness. So what define the Dzogchen in terms of individual is that the individual is not only defined by his or her own experience. There is a ground of the individual, and whatever happens in terms of experiences during the life are just transitory, or just, we can say, even in the Dzogchen, we say it's illusory, meaning that it's not definite. It's not definite, first of all, and it's not definitive on the second way. It means that all our experiences are not defining what we really are. And for the Dzogchen tradition, all these experiences in life are just the surface of what we are. So in the Dzogchen tradition, we use that either way, happy experiences, difficult experiences, or catastrophic experiences. We try to see that as something we can just observe to reach another level of what we really are. So this is the way great perfection, just Dzogchen, just see the reality, just define the reality, and there is no really definite definition as well for Dzogchen. So one thing which really important is that point, the feeling of loneliness is not existent by itself.
Yes.
It's just a way we define our experience. We define, in fact, we can say for the Dzogchen view, it comes from the loss of the link of the relation we have to ourselves, to others, to the reality. So loneliness is more something that we experience as a loss than a real experience on its own. So when we say
fundamental experience in this sense,
when we say it's a loss, it's more like we feel empty. It's more. There is something inside me that is a void. You are talking about emptiness. In the Dzogchen tradition, we talk more in when we say it's related to the emotions or sensations or whatever. It's more a voidness, and emptiness. It's the real aspect of this voidness. We will experience this voidness as something that is really terrible, that is really impactful, that is really extreme in our behavior. But its real nature is emptiness. And emptiness, in fact, it's the real nature of everything for the Dzogchen, but it's really, really difficult to access, especially if we think that this voidness affects us in a really deep manner. And so the Dzogchen, we can say that the way to try to define what loneliness is for me is to try to see it directly by the experience. And everything is about experience in the Dzogchen tradition, because the way we will define conceptually the reality is just conceptual, and it's not our real experience. So the first thing is to reconnect to this real experience, trying not to fly from it or to fight it, but trying to see first of all what this is really.
To rest in it, we could say, or
to rest in it, yes, why not? First of all, to be clear with it. So we just try to remain in it. And then after a while, we will see clearly what kind of experience it is.
Okay.
So this is more or less, this is the way Dzogchen can define this feeling of loneliness. And I really insist on the fact that it's not defined as it is, because Dzogchen, in the Dzogchen tradition, in almost all the texts we can find, loneliness is not defined as loneliness. It's different. And in fact, in the Dzogchen tradition, we go often to do some retreat in the wild, and we are really alone, and
we can
it's incredible.
We can observe the real side of loneliness.
Yes, exactly.
But for that, it needs to face it first, or to face, or at least to let it,
to recognize it as it is.
Thank you, Mila Khyentse. Arnaud Buisson, would you maybe, as a practitioner, tell us if the practice of Dzogchen helps you somehow to deal with this feeling of loneliness, or maybe to perceive it in a different way?
Yes. For me, it's a gradual path. And Rinpoche said it, the first steps was simply to learn to recognize and feel this feeling in my own experience. Because after all, who can say they never experience it, right? And in the beginning, there may be a kind of intellectual recognition, maybe. We notice this suffering and we become aware of our automatic reactions, our ways of escaping, our struggles. We learn to observe the intention behind our behaviors and to recognize action motivated by lack, pain, or fear. And maybe we also observe the consequences of these reactions and how this suffering works, which, if left unchallenged, tends to feed on itself. And then there is a step that was essential for me, which was gradually leaving behind the problem-solving mode of the mental and conceptual mind and returning to the feeling of the body and to a much more direct relationship with this feeling and this vulnerability.
So the point here is that to renounce of solving the problem. I mean, it's to renounce to it so that you can remain in the experience, right?
Yes, or to renounce to speak about. So it's really about moving from the story we tell ourselves, shifting from I feel lonely because to simply I feel that I'm lonely directly. Because it has to be said that we can complicate everything very easily, and without awareness we tend to feed the conceptual mind, adding what we are worthless, that it's unfair, that it's someone else's fault, that we've been abandoned, etc. And then I can take responsibility for this vulnerability and gradually move away from passive waiting and step out from the position of undergoing. It means I can also stop deluding myself by postponing an idea of something that should happen, but will always remain just an idea. For me, the antidote to the feeling of loneliness is really this deep sense of completeness. So that's why practice is essential, to reconnect and surrender again and again to that fullness, that joy, that warmth, that calm, that peace, that we are. So to sum up, I'd say that the feeling of loneliness is for me a state of vulnerability that reflects the forgetting of the completeness of our own mind. And it can serve as a good reminder to practice.
Thank you, Arnaud. So maybe Mila Khyentse Rinpoche, to conclude this podcast, would you be possible maybe to share a practice that could help us to recognize this feeling of loneliness?
Well, it's first of all, it's not a Dzogchen practice per se. It's not a direct Dzogchen practice.
It's more gradual.
So it's more a preparation we do, applying what we call Shine. And this is the first step of Shine, which is really remarkable. First of all, to gain clarity about your mental state, about your emotional state. And secondly, as you said, Arnaud, there is one really interesting point here, is that I am not alone because, and I am just alone. It's like the way to see it directly is not trying to determine why I am alone, because it's the way usually I fly away from the problematics.
So
from
the storytelling we could have about the
you were
situation.
talking you were talking, Arnaud, about the storytelling, the story, the fairy tale we tell ourselves, but the first thing is to relink to our real experience. And if we do not relink to this experience, it will increase more and more, because we will fly away from our own experience. So we will fly away from what really is our experience. So this point is really crucial, because the main view of this exercise, the main view of this concentration exercise, I cannot say it's the meditation according to Dzogchen, but it's more concentration process onto our feelings, emotions, and so on. It's just to be concentrated directly on it, not trying to fly, not trying to explain, not trying to fight, not trying to, just remaining directly experiencing the feeling. And then it's really important to have also a physical posture which changes from our habits as well, because if not, there will be the usual normal process. So we will try to break this a bit, to just comment it. So we take a special position, a special body posture. If you can just sit down on the ground, it will be fine. If not, on a chair, whatever. But the first thing is just having the back straight and your eyes are gazing downwards on a point, which will help you to just remain here and now. And then whenever this feeling of loneliness, this sadness, this anger, this plural emotions you just feel about being lonely, for example, when they arise, you just take this posture, you just focus onto one point with your eyes, and you just remain on it. That's it. You do not try to do something in a really orientated way, trying to change this feeling or trying to fly from this feeling. You just remain on it. And you just observe it. Observing it, meaning that you regain some clarity, and you relink to your own experience. And you will see there is something that is really interesting, and some people say, oh, it's magical, but it's really not. The feeling just decreases on its own. It's not vanishing, and this is why we say it's not magical. It's decreasing. Why? Because we are just trying to observe it directly. So we are not trying to do something else with it. And so we are beginning to see it as it is, not as we think it is. So we do not add a pain on it. We do not add, we say, the pain of the pain. And so we are not judging it as negative, as painful, harmful, etc. We just see it as it is. First of all, a sensation. And slowly, this sensation just decreases.
So we focus a bit more on bodily sensation, right? In this process, or
you can say it's a bodily sensation, but it's not, because it's something that is coming from the mind.
For sure.
So this has to be really clear. But we are experiencing it. We feel it. We have the impression that we feel it through the body. Because there is some tightness, for example, in our chest, or there is some pain, in the neck, etc., etc. And so we are just focusing on it. And slowly it will decrease. And then whenever there is this kind of emotion that arises again, we do it. Each time it arises, we do it.
Okay.
And slowly it will just decrease.
Okay, very good. It seems maybe for the people who are not used to this kind of practice, a bit counterintuitive to put their attention on.
A lot of people, as we do not know how usually our mind works, we are afraid to face it directly. But it's the best way, in fact.
To decrease the feeling of...
It's not having the will to decrease it. It's just a normal process. Whenever you gain clarity, you see it more and more as it is. And that's it. But what we could say it's counterintuitive, but Arnaud, you said also that just before, is that we think in an usual way that if we do not watch it directly, if we just look somewhere else, then it will disappear. It's not. It's still
in
there.
The contrary.
And you know, we spend our life, maybe all our life, to do that without any success anytime. So as we see that it doesn't work, then the only answer and the only logical answer is to see it directly. And it's the way all these traditions, because this is coming from Buddhism more than Dzogchen, this is what all these traditions says. If you want to be free, just remain here and now.
Well, thank you very much for this conclusion and for all the sharings.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arnaud and Mila Khyentse.
Thank you.
And stay tuned for the listeners to our next episode, because we are going to discuss about the digital solitude, so another topic. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
You can find more episodes on your website, dzogchentoday.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast app and share it with your friends. We will be pleased to receive your feedbacks on podcast@dzogchentoday.org.